the things that evoke awe are often large. At times, massive. Immensity inspires wonders. We say, the bigger the better, and we mean it. Hundreds of makes and models of airliners have been built over the decades, but only one reigns as the undisputed heavyweight king, first among the giants. It has been called the Whale, the Big One, Fat Albert, Big Ugly, the Aluminum Cloud. But Boeing's remarkable 747 is best known by the term it inspired. With its humpback, 4 massive engines, 3 decks, forest of landing gears, goose-like waddle, and staggering dimensions, the 747 is said to be the most recognized airplane in the world. It may just be the most popular as well. That kind of celebrity was never anticipated. The British and French were developing Concorde for international travel as Boeing developed its 747. While the European transport had supersonic appeal, its small cabin could accommodate only 100 passengers, too few to make money. So airlines bought the Boeing as an interim aircraft, one they'd use until a large fuel-efficient SST arrived. Now, more than 3 decades later, they're still waiting. Meanwhile, the big Boeing proved itself to be so economical, so accommodating, so delightful to fly, and so adaptable to changing technologies that it became the mainstay of international air travel. More than 1,200 of the giants have been delivered so far, and Boeing has orders stretching years into the future. Boeing has produced 6 basic versions of the 747. First was the Model 100. Then came the heavier Model 200. There is the high-density SR shuttle, the short-body long-range SP, the Dash 300 with its noticeably lengthened upper deck, and then the 747-400, which has distinctive winglets. In addition, there are swing-nosed freighters and combis, which are aircraft that carry both passengers and cargo on the main deck. Also, more than a dozen 747s have been modified for special uses. When necessary, the Pentagon conscripts civilian 747s to move personnel and cargo. During the Gulf War, for example, 747s carried 644,000 troops and 220,000 tons of cargo and equipment. The Air Force owns and operates several 747s as airborne command vehicles. And as to do the unusual, 747s have proven adept at carrying spacecraft and leaders of state with equal aplomb.
Men and women of Boeing, I have looked forward to coming here for a long time, and I guess what I ought to begin by saying is thank you for Air Force One. You know, everywhere I go in that airplane, I am the second most important celebrity. People really just want to see the plane.
747s crowd airports across the globe. At any moment of any day, thousands of people are flying somewhere aboard a 747. More than any other airplane, the big Boeing has brought distant people together. By now, billions of people of every nationality, color, creed, and political persuasion have traveled aboard 747s. It is the airplane that changed the world. Joe Sutter led the team of Boeing engineers that designed it.
It's carried a significant portion of the entire Earth's population in safety and comfort and efficiency. It opened up air travel to almost anybody that wants to fly. Today, it's still the queen of the skies.
The 747's first appearance was a day to remember. Boeing engineer Jeff Olson was one of the thousands on hand, and he recalls the moment vividly.
When on September 30th, 1968, And to watch the airplane roll out and watch the doors open as the nose of the airplane came out, I had to make sure I didn't faint. I couldn't wait to call up my father and tell him that I was part of something that made world history.
And yet, before the 747's reign began, many were hesitant to embrace its huge form. A test pilot who retired as a vice president at Boeing, Brian Weigel, was co-pilot on the very first flight of the 747.
During the development, before we flew, there were a lot of concerns. Concerns about turning such a huge airplane on the existing runways and taxiways. There was concerns whether pilots could land it from the great height the cockpit was at.
Gary Pugh was among the army of workers who helped build that first one.
There was, I think, some concern amongst travelers and just the general public that the airplane was just too big.
Even Pugh had some doubts when he watched Brian Weigel, project pilot Jack Waddell, and flight engineer Jess Wallach take the Big Bird aloft for the very first time one wintry morning in February 1969.
My greatest recollection of that day was not the takeoff, really, but the landing, because as we watched the airplane approach from the north, coming in over Puget Sound, it had this beautiful nose-high attitude, but it seemed like it was going too slowly. Didn't seem like it was going fast enough to generate the lift that it needed to stay airborne. But I've learned to accept that now, and I still am in awe as I watch that airplane approach for a landing today. It's a beautiful sight to me.
4 months later, the excitement of that first flight was relived when the Boeing touched down at Le Bourget Airport to make an awesome international debut. The Paris Air Show is the most prestigious aviation gathering in the world. In 1969, the show belonged to the 747. Former Boeing Vice Chairman Mal Stamper, who then headed the 747 program, remembers it well.
My proudest moment was flying it to Le Bourget for the first time. We flew her nonstop from Seattle to Paris. You know, to fly it nonstop, we were going to steal the show. And we did. And that was a great day for America.
Even after all these years, the 747 is still something to behold. This is the 747-400, the current production version, and in number of units delivered, the most popular. It's over 6 stories high. From nose to tail, it's almost 232 feet, just about twice the length of the Wright brothers' first flight. The Dash 400's wings spread 211 feet, so long they make the winglets at their tips seem tiny. But these drag-reducing appendages actually stand 6 feet tall. Its elevators, the movable horizontal tail fins, are as large as the main wings of a 737. Filled with fuel, cargo, passengers, and crew, a 747 can weigh as much as 875,000 pounds, about equal to 250 minivans. Just one wing weighs 28,000 pounds. That's the same weight as a fully loaded DC-3, the most advanced airliner of its era. On average, the exterior paint of a typical 747 weighs 1,200 pounds. When the 747 first appeared, passengers were agog as they entered the cabin. It was cavernous, 20 feet wide, 8 feet from floor to ceiling. The exterior walls were flat vertical, not curved. Rows had up to 10 seats across. It had 2 main aisles that ran nearly 200 feet from front to back. They just went on and on. There were even crossing aisles. Overhead compartments on both sides, as well as in the middle. A total of 9 galleys and 15 lavatories. The enclosure seemed more like a waiting room than a flying machine. And for uneasy flyers, that illusion was welcome. To help the general public understand the new spacious world that awaited them, Boeing produced a series of commercials about its new jumbo.
The Boeing 747, just like a luxury hotel. Next time you go anywhere, fly the 747. You'll have a ball. Boeing, getting people together.
The space that really drew the public's interest was the upstairs lounge. Here was the Jet Set's hideaway, with its own stairway no less. It was a flying penthouse, a private club for the well-heeled. Its exclusivity had powerful allure, and airlines made the most of it. Because it can carry so many people and carry them so far, the 747 has the lowest seat miles costs of any jetliner. And that's the real key to low fares. In a typical 3-class configuration, a 747 seats about 420 passengers. The special high-density version used as an intercity shuttle in Asia seats 568 people. And if necessary, the 747 can carry even more, a lot more. On one emergency evacuation flight from Ethiopia in 1991, an Israeli El Al 747 squeezed aboard a mind-boggling 1,087 refugees to safety. When it landed, it had more passengers than at takeoff. 3 babies were born en route. A sister ship carried another 920 refugees. When Boeing decided to build the 747, its main plant in Seattle was unsuited for such a huge project. So the company purchased 780 acres of wooded land at Payne Field in Everett, Washington, some 30 miles to the north. Site preparation included bulldozing as much earth as was moved in building the Panama Canal and Grand Coulee Dam combined. They even built their own railway spur. The development program was on such a tight schedule, Boeing couldn't wait for the building to be completed before it began aircraft production. Unfortunately, the weather refused to cooperate. It rained every day for weeks. Joe Sutter.
The factory was built at the same time as the airplane. We literally were building parts of the airplane in the rains because the roof hadn't been on in that part of the factory.
Covering 152 acres, the Pentagon is the world's largest office building in terms of floor area. But when it comes to volume of enclosed space, Boeing's new building in Everett was the world's largest edifice. And so it remains. Even larger today, it encloses 472 million cubic feet, about the same as 500 Madison Square Garden arenas. The plant's roof is over 9 stories high. Each hangar door is larger than a football field. 18 giant cranes cruise along the ceiling, moving multi-ton fuselage and wing sections like so many fireplace logs. A giant nest scaled perfectly for its jumbo offspring. Building a 747 has always been an international effort. The fabrication of the parts subassemblies occurs at factories and shops throughout the world. Belfast, Northern Ireland makes the landing gear doors. The ailerons and spoilers are built in Japan. Most of the upper fuselage is made in California, and a variety of wing components hail from Australia. All total, some 1,100 companies are involved, making everything from flaps and engines to seats and instruments. The parts arrive by air, ship, rail, and road. Boeing even uses a specially designed expandable truck to haul the 747's 110-foot-long wing spars from a plant 45 miles down the interstate. The truck can extend to almost 128 feet, so long it requires a second driver sitting in a cab below the rear chassis to steer the back wheels. A total of 6 million items, half of them fasteners, go into every 747. Gathering all those pieces in one place at just the right time and then fashioning them into a gargantuan flying machine is a task as daunting as the aircraft itself. 747 Program Operations Director Jack Jones is well familiar with the choreography involved.
Inside this factory, the process begins when we load what's called a spar, wing spar, into the first tool up on a balcony. From that point, it goes all the way to delivery till we actually hand the keys over to the airline. And that process is approximately about 5 months. We are continually trying to take that amount of time and reduce it to the point where we think we got a robust and efficient process. The largest assemblies, sized assemblies, come from Northrop Grumman down in Los Angeles. They provide the body panels, the aft end of the 747. That comes in from Vought in Texas. And then, of course, we have the engine manufacturers that provide the engines. If you look throughout this factory, you're going to find several thousand people are involved in building this airplane. We're currently building 3.5 airplanes a month. The most we've ever built, 747s, in 1 month is 7.
Once a new 747-400 joins the commercial fleet, it immediately begins to earn back the $160 million or more its owners spent to acquire it. In the earliest days of the 747 program, the payback was sometimes delayed by the engines, the lack of them. That was during Mal Stamper's watch.
And if you've ever seen almost $1 billion worth of airplanes lined up with cement blocks on them, and you love airplanes, it was a tragedy as far as we were concerned.
Traditionally, every new generation of aircraft is led by a new generation of engines, and so it was with the Jumbo. The original 747 was more than twice as heavy as the 707, then Boeing's biggest jetliner. To move all that metal, the designers relied on a new kind of jet engine called a high bypass turbofan. A high bypass engine has a turbojet core producing a thrust stream, but in addition, it's fitted with an extra large forward fan with blades nearly 8 feet wide. These drive air through the hot core, but they also send a much larger volume of air around the compressor, combustion, and turbine sections, bypassing it. This cool air then joins the hot exhaust, adding a tremendous amount of thrust while simultaneously smothering the noisy jet blast. That thermodynamic leapfrog produced an engine so remarkably quiet, clean, fuel-efficient, and powerful that it was nothing short of revolutionary. The perfect power source for the new Goliath. Pratt & Whitney was selected by Boeing to make the engines for its new Jumbo. Although an excellent design, the engine was being developed simultaneously with the aircraft. It turned out that the new Pratt turbofan had teething problems, and the 747 was ready before the engine. And so airplanes came off the line with counterweights from the engine pylons. Pratt & Whitney soon got the turbofan program back on track, and the engine went on to become one of the most reliable in commercial service. Today, airlines can choose from 3 engine manufacturers: Pratt & Whitney, Rolls-Royce, and General Electric. Virgin Atlantic, for example, uses engines from all 3 manufacturers in its fleet of 747s. Regardless of which engine is selected, the price will be high, upwards of $8 to $10 million each. The high price reflects the demands placed upon them. A 747-400 engine must deliver upwards of 57,000 pounds of thrust. Put another way, every half second it moves enough air to fill a 4-bedroom house. Doing that pushes core temperatures above 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The engine must be tough enough to gulp down a seagull-sized bird without so much as a burp, and strong enough to contain the extraordinary energy of a broken fan blade. Meanwhile, it's expected to work hard 12 hours a day or more, every day, for years, before going for major overhaul. And they do. For example, this GE CF6 has a near-perfect dispatch reliability record of 99.96%. That means it starts right on schedule 1,999 times out of 2,000. Its rate of unplanned shutdowns during flight is 0.006 per 1,000 flight hours. That means an engine has a serious problem in flight every 40 years or so. And on a 747, the loss of one engine is pretty much a non-event. The other three can do the job easily. Simply put, these engines are masterpieces of mechanical artistry. Constant attention to the engines and airframes ensures they'll perform unerringly. A 747 routinely gets intensive scrutiny. Mechanics check the power plants and major systems daily. On the newest 747s, onboard computers monitor systems and help the mechanics pinpoint trouble quickly. And at specific intervals over months and years, the aircraft and engines go into the shop for detailed examination and replacement of worn or time-sensitive parts. These inspections, called C&D checks, involve the virtual disassembly of the airplane. One of the primary purposes of such a labor-intensive undertaking is to search out minuscule cracks and fissures caused by metal corrosion, an airplane's unrelenting nemesis. Without the interior walls and seats, you get an even better appreciation for the 747's true immensity. One look inside the fuselage, and it's easy to understand the 747's appeal as a freighter. In fact, the aircraft's prodigious dimensions were dictated by placing two standard shipping containers side by side. Hauling freight is a significant and growing contributor to every airline's bottom line, and the 747 was designed with freight in mind. The cargo hold on a passenger version of the 747 is large, measuring over 6,000 cubic feet. Specially shaped cargo containers and pallets fit inside the hold like giant puzzle pieces. What they contain defies easy categorization. Cars, cantaloupes, cognac, conga drums, or canvas for racing yachts. The 747 is the primary reason New Englanders can eat fresh Chilean raspberries in winter, and new Japanese laptops are in European shops a day after introduction. Virgin Atlantic is one of the many 747 passenger carriers that makes the most of this valuable space. Virgin's David Tate explains.
We generally carry something between 10 and 12 tons of cargo on every flight. So there's generally standby cargo that's waiting to get on if we have the space to put it on there.
When it was designing the 747, Boeing thought that carrying freight would eventually become the airplane's primary role once the Super SST arrived. The reason they put the pilots atop the main deck wasn't to create an upper lounge, but rather to enable cargo loading directly through the nose on dedicated freighters. For passengers, however, the most welcome containers loaded aboard are the ones prepared here. On a typical transoceanic flight, the 420 passengers use and consume up to 50,000 items. The vast majority of the things consumed come from flight kitchens, like this Dobbs International facility at John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York. As departure time nears, the kitchen workers put last-minute garnishes on the hundreds of servings of mesquite barbecue chicken, beef fillet with Stilton apple and walnut sauce, and saffron risotto that will be loaded aboard. Executive Chef Brian Mangan for Virgin Atlantic.
On the 747, we're doing two services out of JFK, roughly about 850 meals, including the crew with a double service. Out of LA to London, they're doing a 3 service, which would also include a tea service. There's about 13 different special meals that we offer here. The top 3 would be the vegetarian, low-cal, low-fat, and the child meal. On a 747, roughly about what we're putting on there, we're putting on 50 pounds of dry ice, 120 pounds of wet ice, 800 pounds of chicken, 500 pounds of seafood, 400 pounds of pasta, 80 pounds of beef. On the sodas, there's roughly about 1,000 cans of sodas that go on a 747.
The ramp around a 747 is a busy place from the moment the airplane pulls into the gate. It's an old saying in the airline business that airplanes make no money on the ground. So the airline operators carefully orchestrate ground operations to get their birds back in the air as quickly as possible. As Virgin Atlantic's Executive Vice President North America, David Tate has a keen interest in keeping 747s moving.
At Virgin Atlantic, we like to schedule about a 3-hour turn at the very minimum. That gives us the time to do everything to the level that we like to do it. We can do it in less, but we like to schedule 3 hours. When the airplane arrives, the first job at hand is to get the passengers off. But on average, we'll have about 300 and something passengers. That generally will take at least 15, maybe 20 minutes to get them all off with the bags. And only when all the passengers are off can we start doing all the things that have got to be done to turn the airplane on board. On the main deck, that will include servicing lavatories, cleaning the cabin. It means going through seat backs to see if people have lost things. They will have to replenish most of the materials in each seat back, which can take 30 seconds or so per seat, which for nearly 400 seats adds up. The cabin crew have their own series of checks that they have to go through in terms of inspecting every seat to see that the cleaners have done the job. In the meantime, we have to decater the airplane, which means taking all of the catering carts off and then recater the thing. A full 747 will generally carry something like 4 tons of food and beverage for the passengers, so that's quite a bit. Obviously, it's loaded in containers, and those have all pre-assigned spots, so it's quite a well-refined science. Below decks, there's a lot of technical things going on. The passengers like to arrive with their bags, so while they're coming off, we're already unloading the cans underneath them.
On average, a 747 flight carries 500 pieces of luggage or more in its belly. Once the airplane arrives at its destination, these have to be removed quickly and brought to the baggage claim. After the bags and cargo are removed, the process reverses. The powerful main deck loaders lift shipping containers filled with cargo and passenger bags up to the belly doors. Automatic rollers slide the containers into place where they're secured. Meanwhile, the laboratory truck, known to one and all as the honey cart, goes about its business emptying the aircraft's 4-tank, 300-gallon vacuum waste system. And tanker trucks pump up to 57,285 gallons of jet fuel aboard. That's enough liquid to fill 2 suburban swimming pools. The first officer does the walk-around inspection looking for anything out of the ordinary. Then he joins the captain on the flight deck for their final pre-flight checks. And flight attendants prepare for the 400 guests who will be coming to dinner.
When all of those are comfortable with the state of the cabin and the state of the airplane, we'll give the word to our ground crew that we're ready to board the airplane. Boarding a 747 is quite a long process. You can board one passenger every 5 seconds, so generally speaking, you need a full 30 to 45 minutes to board simply to get the passengers on board the airplane. And that's before you get them bedded down with seat belts on and everything stowed.
But soon the cargo is secured, passengers settled. The moment for pushback arrives. Every 747 journey begins with pre-flight planning. Here, Virgin Atlantic pilots Steve Hallett and Bob Bees arrive at the airline's flight dispatch office at London Heathrow Airport, hours before scheduled departure to New York. They review data on airport conditions, passenger and cargo loads, and fuel requirements. They also study weather and wind information for the planned route. 747 pilots often need to study quite a lot of route data because the airplane can go a long way. The aircraft's original range of 5,300 miles has increased steadily over the years, and now the 747-400 can go 8,300 miles. That's a third of the way around the globe without refueling. London to Singapore, LA to Hong Kong, New York to Tokyo, LA to Sydney. Traditionally, flight planning calculations, such as takeoff and climb speeds, equal time points, and alternate airport selection, rested largely with the flight crew. But with computerized weather models, satellite weather monitoring, and real-time global reporting of conditions aloft, many airlines today let machines do most of the prep work. The pilots review the computer-generated plan, highlight their planned route and checkpoints, and then proceed to the aircraft. Once the cockpit checks are completed and clearance received, the airplane is ready to depart. After lifting off from Heathrow at 2 p.m. local time, pilots Hallett and Bees will turn their 747 west and head out over the Atlantic, on what will be a 7-hour, 40-minute flight to New York's JFK International. At cruise altitude, with the autopilot on and doing the flying, the crew monitors their aircraft's myriad systems. Early 747s had nearly 1,000 instruments, lights, and switches to help its 2 pilots and flight engineers stay informed and in control. On the Dash 400, that number has been reduced to 365, thanks largely to the microprocessor and the introduction of digital instrumentation. The digital revolution not only eliminated lots of old-fashioned electromechanical instruments, but the flight engineer as well. There is no flight engineer station on the Dash 400. The pilot and co-pilot do it all. To help them, the vast majority of information is concentrated on television-like screens called cathode ray tubes, or CRTs. 4 deliver flight information. These are the primary flight and navigation displays. 2 others called ICAS, the Engine Indication and Crew Alerting System, monitor the engines or other systems. Captain Hallett.
This is the primary flight display. This shows all the instruments that would normally be on the flight instrument T. Here is the indicated airspeed on the left, the compass rose underneath, the altimeter on the right, and in the center is the artificial horizon. This is called the upper ICAS display. It normally displays the engines. This is the temperature of the engines, and these are the revolutions of the fan, which produces a thrust of the engine. This is the autopilot control panel. The left autopilot is in command. We've selected an altitude of 34,000 feet. We've selected lateral navigation from the flight management system and vertical navigation from the flight management system.
First Officer Bob Bees.
You were talking about the navigation system. What we have on this aircraft, which is excellent, is we have 2 global positioning systems, the GPS. And if you look here, they're showing the position exactly on the nose of this aeroplane, so they're that accurate. And that's by doing satellite triangulation to give us a good fix. The TCAS, which actually stands for Traffic Collision Avoidance System, which shows us where other aircraft are relative to us. Bearing in mind we are now in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, we have here one aircraft who's 22 miles ahead of us, 2,000 feet below us, an aircraft 1,000 feet above us, and an aircraft 2,000 feet above us, and another one who's 1,000 feet below us. Now this is all within 40 miles.
This is ACARS. This is an automated message system which will give printouts. We can send and receive messages, and we can also receive weather. Any weather report we receive will be printed out on this printer here.
Today, the 747 is almost fully automated. Shortly after raising the landing gear, the pilots switch on the autopilot and then oversee the proper functioning of the aircraft systems and their progress along the planned route. The computerized flight director can fly more precisely than any human. In fact, the pilots can tell the autopilot the time and altitude they want to be at a certain fix, and the computer will adjust power and flight path accordingly. As the hands-free super long-range aircraft was evolving, Boeing engineers had a new worry. Lynn Flint, Chief Engineer of Systems on the 747, explains.
The 747 flies so far that there was concern that the crew wouldn't be alert, and so we added a crew alertness system. Basically, if the crew doesn't interact with the systems, every 15 or 20 minutes, they get either an aural or a visual warning.
There's a footnote to describing the Dash 400 as a 2-pilot airplane. This newest 747 can easily fly 15 or 16 hours without refueling. Although pilots typically have 12 hours or more of rest before every long-distance flight, they're usually restricted to 8 hours of flying on any single day. Consequently, backup crews are carried to relieve the primary pilots in flight. There's a tiny bunk room in the rear of the flight deck where the off-duty pilots can sleep. Some call this activity dozing for dollars. At many airlines, pilot compensation increases with the size of the airplane flown. Consequently, the 747 traditionally attracts the most senior, most experienced crews. Some veteran captains with well-established international carriers can earn upwards of $250,000 annually. But compensation notwithstanding, the big Boeing would still draw eager pilots, because despite its stupendous bulk, it is a surprisingly nimble and forgiving airplane. Pilots simply love to fly it.
I've been very fortunate. I've flown all models of the 747, and I've been flying 747 since 1982. The 747-400 is certainly the best of the aircraft I've flown. It flies faster than any other commercial aircraft other than Concorde. It has a lot of fail-safe and backup systems. It's certainly probably the most reliable aircraft in the world that we have nowadays. But when I was told I was going to go on the 747-400, it was the absolutely greatest thing that had happened to me, and I've certainly enjoyed every moment of it ever since.
Because of the 747's size and the high number of passengers it was to carry, Boeing insisted that the Superjet be super safe. Throughout, systems redundancies run deep. Joe Sutter.
When we were asked to design such a large airplane, Boeing and everybody was concerned about the impact of an accident for that airplane. So safety was really foremost on our mind. We designed for redundancy and a strong structure. For instance, the wing has 3 spars in it. The only airplane I know of with 3 wing spars. All of the systems are quadruple. 4 hydraulic systems, 4 generation systems. The landing gear has 4 legs to it, the only airplane with 4 legs to the landing gear. One of the reasons is the airplane could come home and make a safe landing even if one landing gear was torn off or would not come down.
Redundancy included doubling up on the moving surfaces designed to control the giant in the air. The rudder, elevators, and ailerons were split, so if one failed, there would always be a backup. Sutter's team also fitted the aircraft with triple-slotted flaps and leading-edge devices. With those, the 747, then and still the fastest subsonic jetliner, became a model of good behavior at slow speeds as well. The 747's superb handling at low speeds results from a combination of things, including its triple-slotted flaps, leading-edge slats, and its bulk. John Cashman is Boeing's chief test pilot.
The larger the size of the aircraft, the more stable it is in turbulence. And also, it doesn't divert from its flight path other than by direct flight control input from the pilot. So when you set it on a path, it tends to stay there. And it makes it easy to fly because of that.
And to further ensure aircraft safety, the pilots undergo training sessions in cockpit simulators every year. The training extends to the cabin crew as well. Regulations say a downed airliner has to be clear to passengers within 90 seconds. Not an easy task. Matthew Hudson is an in-flight supervisor with Virgin Atlantic.
I head that up. I've evacuated a jumbo once, and you have to be prepared for that every time you fly. Hey, I was only a junior flight attendant at the time, but it's such a good feeling afterwards, having evacuated the jumbo, knowing that you can do it.
That's true. But even despite all that, occasionally accidents do occur. To help determine what went wrong, there's a microphone in the overhead instrument panel that picks up the pilot's conversations and radio transmissions for storage in an audio recorder in the tail. Similarly, there's a device that continuously monitors and records the performance of the airplane and its subsystems. These recorders are commonly known as black boxes.
The airplane, after 30 years, is one of the safest airplanes flying.
For most passengers, flight safety has long been presumed, and their foremost concern en route is the matter of personal comfort. With the arrival of the big cabin 747, airlines had the opportunity to improve things for the folks in the cabin. And so, on early 747 flights, welcome amenities included lavish food services in first class and choices of entrees and coach. There were hot towels and first-run movies. Suddenly, flying long distances became tolerable, even a pleasant diversion. At many airlines, the tradition continues. For example, Virgin Atlantic 747 upper-class passengers can have manicures in flight, back and neck rubs as well. The airplane is so big, they've even installed a stand-up bar and lounge. And as upper-class passengers can attest, the tradition of four-star dining continues, complete with china on white linen and choices of entrees, wines, and desserts, each one more sumptuous than the other. The latest 747s are equipped with passenger conveniences and entertainments unimagined when the aircraft was first conceived. Moving maps let passengers watch their flight's progress. Video games keep kids amused. Lynn Flint.
And in the passenger cabin, we've gone from piano bars and decks of cards to in-seat, in-flight entertainment, where you can choose which movie you want to watch, make a phone call, send a fax, or even plug your PC in.
Virgin Atlantic's David Tate.
We have a choice of up to 16 movies on most of our aircraft. We also have Nintendo games, interactive games, so if you're traveling with young kids, you basically just plug them in and forget about them for 6 or 7 hours. I tell you, it's the greatest way to fly with children.
The Jumbo's arrival probably had more impact on the cabin crew than on the pilots. While a handful of close-knit flight attendants could service a 707, up to 20 were needed on the 747. Suddenly, they had to provide hot meals for more than 400 at one sitting, a challenge for even the largest restaurants. Fortunately, the 747's wide center galleys and twin aisles made this feat of culinary magic routine. While passengers liked the cabin's broad dimensions, the seating area was so big and pathways so numerous that the 747 created a new phenomenon: children lost in flight. The little ones would wander away from their seats, and without any street signs available, they'd become utterly disoriented. "Would Mr. So-and-so please come to the coach galley and claim your son?" became a signature announcement over the 747's public address system. The sheer volume of passengers brought other new concerns to the cabin staff. For example, sales of drinks, duty-free goods, and headset rentals generated considerable sums of cash in a variety of currencies. The money had to be safeguarded, and the large inventory accounted for daily. Flight attendants are no less subject to fatigue than the pilots on the extra-long flights, and now Boeing has devised a refuge for them as well. It's called the attic, a place of quiet solitude for flight attendants like Carrie Noonan.
It's upstairs towards the rear of the aircraft. When we're on long flights, we do occasionally get a break, and we have a few bunk beds up there, which are usually very cozy. It's a race to get the best one, though, the darkest one.
All of this activity and inactivity occurs while the aircraft is cruising at 560 miles per hour, some 7 miles above the Earth. Outside, the air is too thin to breathe, and the temperature is minus 54 degrees Celsius or minus 65 degrees Fahrenheit. Yet inside, the cabin is warm and comfortable. Separating these two radically different environments is a skin of tempered aluminum just a 1/16 of an inch thick. Lynn Flint.
We keep people comfortable in the passenger cabin by insulating the structure and by taking bleed air off the engines, putting it through the air conditioning units, and then either heating it or cooling it to the right temperature, ducting it through the passenger cabin and exhausting it through the outflow valve. This provides a fresh air change every 3 minutes.
Before beginning their letdown from cruise altitude of 35,000 feet, the pilots review approach procedures as well as the airport chart detailing the maze of taxiways they will follow to their gate. Once cleared by air traffic control, the captain retards the throttles and the 747 begins to descend. The pilot deploys the speed brakes to accelerate the descent. The flight deck is a busy place as the pilot sets up for the approach. There are speed adjustments, course changes, radio handoffs. To slow for landing, the co-pilot extends the huge set of triple-slotted flats. Then he lowers the 18-wheeled landing gear. The passengers hear the gear as it extends and locks in place. Also, during descent and approach, they hear changes in engine power and flap deployment as well. The blue cloud produced when the still tires smack the runway signals another 747 arrival. The noisiest moment comes when the thrust reversers go to work to slow the airplane after touchdown. Welcome to New York. The local time is 4:30 p.m. The aircraft is on the runway and slowed to taxiing speed. The captain takes hold of the nose wheel tiller near his knee and steers the big Boeing to its arrival gate. The passengers exit, collect their bags, and head for home. Meanwhile, on the ramp, the process begins all over again. 747s have been doing this every day for more than 3 decades. And in all likelihood, they'll still be at it for decades to come, with further upgrades in instrumentation, engines, structure, and passenger amenities. For example, the 747-400 is fitted with an enhanced ground proximity warning system. This piece of electronic wizardry alerts the pilot that the airplane is coming too close to mountains or other terrain.
So the latest versions of the airplane, as an example, have enhanced ground proximity warning system, which is a very high-tech way of improving crew avoidance of the ground when they're not sure of their position. The airplane and its systems knows where it is, even if the pilot may be confused or if air traffic control might make a mistake. That's the very latest safety enhancement that's going into commercial airliners today, and the 747-400 has that.
It's a much better airplane now than it was originally, and it's proven to be economically desirable. It's a pretty comfortable ride. It's easy for pilots to fly, and I guess that's the rest is history.
It's just more roomy, the ceilings are higher, and you don't really feel like you're on a plane, you feel like you're on a restaurant in the sky. Feel safer. I feel safer on the 747.
I think the majority of passengers, it's their favourite aircraft. Some aircraft have a very claustrophobic feel to them when you're inside, especially when you're 6'2" like me. No problems on the 747. Plenty of room. The passengers relax more in plenty of room. The cabin crew can do their job better. The perfect aircraft.
The 747 is commonly known as a jumbo. It's also a cash cow, a big cash cow, in that, well, let me put it in perspective. The revenue that we generate at Virgin Atlantic on one round trip of our airplane between New York and London, which is between $400,000 and $500,000 that we generate on one round trip of the airplane. So it's a lot of money. When we started service in 1984, we only had one airplane to begin with, and frankly, choosing the 747 was a bit of a no-brainer.
Some airports are reaching maximum operational capacity. During peak hours, the runway simply can't accommodate any additional landings and takeoffs. Since it is the number of aircraft, rather than their size, that causes constraints, some operators want to use the biggest airplane possible. Consequently, interest has grown in developing a super jumbo, one capable of carrying 550 passengers or more.
Boeing and others have been talking about expanding the size of their biggest airplane for some years now. I think it may well be something that has to happen given the constraints at airports.
As Director of Product Development at Boeing, David Anderson has unique insight to the 747's future.
We look at airplanes larger than the 747 that are designed from scratch. We look at supersonic transports. We look at flying wing type concepts. It looks to me like the airplane that makes the most economic sense is to continually improve the current 747-400.
Naturally, the long-running success of the 747 has not gone unnoticed by the competition. And now Airbus, the European consortium, is planning an even more stupendous aircraft. Initially designated A3XX, has now envisioned this super wide-body giant would be fitted with 555 seats or more on 2 full-length passenger decks. Proposed to enter service early in the new century, the Super Airbus would pose a formidable challenge. But Boeing is confident about the 747 program's viability. Joe Sutter.
I believe the 747 program is just in its midlife. You'll see this airplane flying another 20 or 30 years from now. It'll be in production for something like 50 years.
When Boeing launched the 747 project, the company bet its entire net worth on the airplane. The gamble has paid off handsomely. Adjusted for inflation, the airplane has generated sales in excess of $150 billion. Boeing regards it as its brightest star. And since the vast majority of sales are to carriers outside the United States, the 747 is one of America's most important export products as well. But most people don't think of the 747 in those terms. Rather, to them, it is like an old, well-traveled companion. It takes them safely, comfortably from here to a faraway there. It is familiar. It is absolutely trustworthy. And even now, after all these years, Boeing's remarkable 747 is still a wonder to behold.